Hello everybody, and welcome to Filler Content Productions here. This is part of the anime you usually skip. And for a long time, people have been asking me to do a tier list of my Hoi 4 focus tree favorites. And ever since I recently completed playing every single nation in Hoi 4, I think I'm pretty well versed on where to put everything. But first, quick word from today's sponsor. That's right, today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Keep yourself secure online today by signing up to Surfshark VPN. Surfshark VPN has a variety of different tools to keep you safe online, like the Clean Web tool, which will scan any websites you go on for any malicious content. Pretty nice. And on top of that, of course, it's a VPN service. With a click of a button, you can access region-locked content not available on your devices. And now with over 3,000 servers in 95 different countries, you can finally say goodbye to region-locked content for good. But the most important feature for me is that you can use Surfshark VPN with one login on all of your devices. That's right, unlimited devices with one login. So go ahead, sign up with Surfshark VPN today using my link down in the description. You can click right now and you'll get yourself 83% off and 3 extra months for free. And of course, if for whatever reason you're not happy with Surfshark VPN, you can get yourself a 30-day money-back guarantee. I use Surfshark every day. It keeps me secure online, and with the fact you can get yourself 83% off and 3 extra months for free, why not? Get yourself started today with Surfshark VPN, 83% off and 3 extra months for free, 30-day money-back guarantee. Click the link down below, and thank you very much, Surfshark, for sponsoring the video. That's right, I'm definitely well-versed and well-qualified to tell you which of these nations are damn awful to play. Now, thankfully, we get to avoid pretty much all of the terrible areas in the game to play anyway, because they don't have focus trees. But a lot of nations on here do have focus trees that aren't very good. Not naming any names. Number 1. The Australian focus tree is going to be a good tester to show where everything is on this board, because the Australian focus tree is beyond mid. One of the first focus trees added through DLC. You gotta give it to Paradox. They gave it a go of adding some flavor to a nation that, well, did need some. Wasn't exactly the #1 priority. I mean, all of the paths aren't exactly great, there's nothing spectacular, but you can get up to doing something and being a minor, helpful role in the world. So we won't be yapping on too much, but the Australian focus tree is straight in the middle there, and either a C or a D. And the only reason I'm going to put it in a C right there is because it actually is kind of fun to play a smaller nation. But actually, now that I say that, because there's actually a better version of this in the exact same DLC, Australia goes in the D tier. No offense, Australia, but your focus tree is just not that great. Plus, the biggest part about it that annoys me is if you go down the support the center party, this entire part down here is pretty much broken. If you support the Indonesian uprising, they will be endlessly in a civil war pretty much for the rest of the game with nothing ever happening. So Australia, definitely D tier. Next up, Bulgaria. Bulgaria is a pretty amazing tree, but that does not make it perfect at all. Whilst the Bulgarian tree is incredibly fun, it is a bit tedious to get around. There is a lot of stuff that you can do, and if you don't do right, well, kaboom goes the nation. It also gets a little bit confusing when you get down to these bottom parts on exactly what you can or cannot do. But saying that, if you do manage to figure out the spaghettiness of the entire of this focus tree, it is incredibly powerful and incredibly fun, especially forming and unifying the Balkans, which for some reason also includes Turkey. So being able to get all cores on the Balkans and Turkey is pretty damn good. But like I said, it's not perfect, and any focus tree that gives you a headache trying to figure out and you actually need to plot out for a good 10-20 minutes before you can do a single focus, not exactly the best. But compared to every other DLC released with the Battle for the Bosphorus DLC, Bulgaria is definitely a shining light of non-trash, which is why I'm putting Bulgaria in B for Bulgaria. The whole country that knocked down Australia from a C to a D, it's Canada. Now, Canada's focus tree is incredibly fun. Not only can you get a pretty huge industry, you also get a lot to do in terms of actually helping out your allies and building somewhat of a small force to, do something. Now, you also get your old history paths that do actually work a lot better than the Australian ones, where you take down your neighbors. But personally, I think Canada and their focus tree is perfect for the small nations that actually want to do a specific task. But the only thing that is a problem is that you do have to choose between industry or manpower. Now, personally, I always go for the industry side of things just because industry damn good, but you do have to choose whether or not you want to get that extra manpower or the industry, which does leave you with a tough choice if you're a player who wants to conquer the entire world. Personally though, I will say that if you do go down the industry side and you just do economy, you will actually have some pretty damn powerful tanks by the end of the game, or I say the end, by the time you've ended the game. Therefore, I gotta say Canada is definitely a C-tier country. Very fun, but not too fun. There are still things in this focus tree that are a little bit of a pain and outdated. I mean, just the Canadian Pacific Railway, you gotta build a level 1 railway from British Columbia to northwestern Canada, and that takes 70 days? Really? Do I need that paradox? Yep, Canada, C tier. Very good. If you haven't done them before and you have that together with Victory DLC, highly recommend them. Next up, Communist China. Now, you may be saying to yourself, oh my god, but the communist focus tree is the same as all the other warlord focus trees once they do the next government. Well, yes, you are true, but I can't judge all of the warlords together because the way you play them and this focus tree is very different. One of the super OP ways to actually play Communist China is because you start communist, you can immediately go down social democracy down here and pretty immediately get yourself in power of all of China. It's incredibly overpowered, but it also means you are essentially just playing China immediately. Going down any of the resistance parts of this tree where you actually do some infiltrating of provinces, as you may know in my pretty recent video where I went communist Shanzi, Zibidi Samar, not Shanzi. The infiltration of provinces that you get from this focus tree is absolutely horrendous, unnecessary, and does nothing. But nonetheless, all three of these different focuses over here do play incredibly fun. If you do Marxist orthodoxy, you get a lot of economy and aid from the Soviet Union, which again I showed off pretty recently. If you go down agrarian socialism, you are pretty much hard locked into going against the Chinese though, which you will need to go over here and start beating them up. And social democracy, in my opinion, is probably the best path you can go down, as you will immediately pretty much get rid of all of China and annex it for yourself. But of course, you won't be Chairman Mao, which for some people definitely a benefit. So again, Communist China, if its focus tree was actually something unique and actually worked as intended, I would give it a higher rank, but overall I gotta say it's right in the middle. Not too fun, but not too terrible. It's a C tier. Alright, next up it's China, and now you don't get the warlord paths, you get the actual Chinese focus tree, which you can get by reforming into China as any of the other warlords. It's all very complicated, but it's not that complicated. I'm gonna be real with you. The differences are, as China, you do need to go through a lot of hassle of reforming the army. You will also have to go down here and deal with inflation, which can be a bit of a bother, as you do need to go ahead and go through a lot of these focuses to get rid of your bad modifiers. Personally, I think the Chinese tree isn't exactly terrible, but it's not great. There is a lot for you to do, and it is pretty stressful if you are a new player, considering you have to deal with the Japanese at the very same time. The only real negative to the Chinese tree is you don't get any alt history paths for the most part. You only get different ways of dealing with the warlords, whether or not you will subjugate them or just ignore them. Of course, you do get the alt history path of actually surviving as China and not being exiled to a damn island if you do succeed. The only other part of the Chinese tree that I won't be mentioning in the warlords is the one that everyone gets shared over here, when you can apply to any of the Allies, the Germans, or the Soviets to actually do some collaboration and get yourself specific techs that you may want to play in your game. Personally, I think this is a pretty good addition, because anything that you want to do specifically, like if you wanted to do Chinese tanks, you can go over here and start doing Chinese tanks. Look! Chinese panzers! Wow! If you wanted to do Navy, you could go over here and talk to the Americans or the Japanese. If you wanted to do planes, you could talk to the British. If you wanted to just focus on superior firepower for some reason, you'd talk to the French. Overall, I've had a lot of fun of China, and I have played China a lot of times. You can get pretty damn powerful pretty quickly if you actually beat back the Japanese very early on. You get a lot of time to build, you have unlimited manpower, and you get a stuff load of industry, which is just amazing. But if you don't deal with the Japanese pretty quickly, you are pretty much hard-locked into China for the rest of the game. It's gonna be a long one for you to beat them back, and then by the time you've done it, there's not gonna be a lot of people for you to beat other than maybe the Soviet Union. But overall, I gotta say, I actually very much enjoy China, and I enjoy the variety of its focus tree. It's not too overly complicated, it's not too difficult to understand for someone who may or may not be new. It's only the difficult challenge of actually beating the Japanese, which if you've got over 100 hours in Hoi, you can probably do. Except you, little Timmy, you suck. Which is why, honestly, I'm going to put the Chinese focus tree in A tier. It's pretty damn good. Next up, it's Czechoslovakia. I have to say, the Czech tree is lacking. We are coming to the earlier focuses that were added through Death or Dishonor, and I do have to say they are not very fun. The majority of the Czech tree is actually pretty inconsequential to the amount of action that you will be facing. Sure, you can go ahead and get a billion different armor designs, but you're going to war in 1939 because the Germans are coming. The realistic outcome is that unless you for some reason go down the old history path and join the Germans, which ends up you giving up as well your land, realistically there's not a lot for you to actually do, which is why I think the fun as Czechoslovakia actually comes down over here on the left, which is you just, you know, holding off the Germans, which is actually incredibly easy. But once you actually go about defeating the Germans, does this tree have a lot to offer? Not really. If you have beaten the Germans in the war already, there's not really any point for you to do the Polish question or the Hungarian situation. Personally, at that point, if you've already annexed a good chunk of Germany, a lot of this stuff is pretty inconsequential, and everything else is bog standard, nothing really great to do. The only thing that is pretty interesting is that you do go down the strategic decisions over here, where you can actually make your own alliance, which, whilst is a little tricky because all your friends will very quickly die, you do get the option to annex people pretty early on. But the reality of the situation, the fun in the Czech playthrough does not come from the focus tree, it just comes from holding off the Germans, honestly, and the rest of this doesn't really add too much unless you get to the sea, where Czechoslovakia will eat the world! Just anything that has a naval path like this should honestly just, it should get 12 minus points and straight into F tier. Now, because I'm actually not rating this on the fun of the nations, but the focus trees themselves, I do actually have to take in consideration that the focus tree in this isn't that great. The fun just comes from you actually playing the Czechs and defeating the Germans, and because I've already made a statement that I'll be judging the Warlords on the fun of their nation, because it actually does have consequence in their focuses. But unfortunately for the Czechs, your focus tree sucks, you're in E tier. Well, I do want to add that if we were rating it on Fun of Nations, Czechoslovakia would definitely be up there in B tier. I'm just not a fan of the focuses. Anyway, on to America. Oh, America. Probably one of the most bog standard focuses that you can get that's not too overly complicated, bloated, or a mess. It is very, very fun. America, without a shadow of a doubt, is probably the most fun you can have in a historical path. Sitting here and building an endless industry is something that you cannot do with a lot of nations, but America pretty much perfects it. You can sit back while the world burns and become the greatest power around, until the Japanese get a little bit uppity and then you're at war. Personally, I think the historical and the kind of historical version of the historical path, which is a lot of words at once, the Neutrality Act and Limited Intervention, are both incredibly fun. Limited Intervention means you can go to war sooner and you won't be as economically powerful, but if you go down the Neutrality Act, you will get a lot more, well, bang for your buck, honestly. Both are incredibly fun. I think the actually least favorite part of this focus tree for me is the non-historical paths. I think they're kind of boring, honestly. Reforming the Confederacy or going communist isn't that great, but there is a cool little trick where you can actually go communist and also go down, I think, the Neutrality Act or something. I showed it off in a video once, but I'm not gonna count that today. Now again, most of the fun in the America path is actually over here, but there is so much to do over in this section as well, where you can go ahead and build a much larger navy. The naval tree is actually very good. It gives you a lot of dockyards and a lot of early stuff that you can get to make a pretty powerful second navy. You also get the Selective Training Act down here, where you can get some incredible buffs for your tanks if you want to do Tank America or Heavy Tank Destroyer America, which is, well, very good, I suppose. Never do it personally. And in the War Plans division, you get not a lot to do, but if you do go ahead and go down the non-historical paths, if you go down to reaffirm the Monroe Doctrine, you actually get a whole bunch of decisions to take land off of people in the Americas. Of course, they usually won't say yes, but sometimes they do. And I think the way it works is anyone that's like a global power, like the UK, the Netherlands, any Europeans that own lands in America, you can demand their land if they are a different ideology towards you, which is pretty good if you are America, and you get the aluminum down here because you do not have any aluminum. The problem we have in America is we don't have enough aluminum. But overall, America is one of my favorite nations, if not the favorite nation. I like to play on the Allies, that is for damn sure, and I gotta give their focus tree, that's right, A tier. A for America! Oh my god, it's Captain Francie Pants with their brand new focus tree added in La Resistance. La Resistance is where we get into the cluster truck of different focuses being a mess from now on. Ever since we went through La Resistance, the focuses just kind of got a little all over the place. But personally, I think the French tree is very fun for what it is. You can do a lot, and I think one of my favorite paths is doing the, where is it? Revenge Waterloo, over here. So when you do this, you pretty much immediately annex the UK very early, as it's very easy to do. You get the Dutch, and you can hold against the Germans incredibly easy. These other two old history focuses, I gotta say, not that great, but the Waterloo one for going monarchist, very fun. Path I've not actually ever done is going communist as France. I've never really played France that much, honestly, except for doing the monarchist paths, which, yep, that sounds terrible, nay, I say it out loud. But I think, honestly, the strength that comes from the French focus tree is the fact that you are actually supposed to stay as France and win. If you go ahead and reform into Free France or Vichy France, I think you get a different focus tree that just becomes you reclaiming France. I have done the Vichy France one before, and it's not that great. The Free France one, again, I have not tried, I think, to my knowledge. I could be wrong there. It's probably in the deep recesses of my brain. But as the general French tree, I gotta say, it's pretty fun. The only thing that is a problem is that all of these focuses kind of rely on you actually winning against the Germans, and all of them make it very easy from what I can tell. Of course, I've only really been down here and played the historical path, which, yeah, it's a lot of fun though. I gotta say, holding as France, pretty fun, but the focus tree, I think it's pretty mid. Not terrible mid like, you know, Canada or China or Communist China. I think it's definitely a B tier. It's a lot of fun, but I guarantee a lot of these paths pretty much equate to nothing. Like, both of these other monarchist ones are pretty terrible. There is also the far right one, there's a communist one, this is a historical one. It's all over the place, and I guarantee half of it isn't that fun. But I gotta say, the parts that are fun are pretty damn fun! B tier, Germany. Now, Germany is pretty much untouched other than our old history part over here, which came in Man the Guns or Waking the Tiger. Man the Guns, I assume. Waking the Tiger, it could be though, I can't remember. And once again, I think the German focus tree will probably get reworked or at least added on at some point, but I do like it. It is a lot of fun, and obviously bringing the Kaiser back leads you to even more paths, like actually getting Austria for free and taking down Mussolini and forcing the king back in charge. It's simple, it's sleek, it works. There's really not a lot to say here. It's fun to play, and the old history paths are incredibly fun, except going democratic. Never go democratic. And the only really downside to opposing Hitler and getting the Kaiser back is that you do get stuck as non-aligned, because you don't end up at war for a long time. It does mean you get limited on manpowers. You can't really up it or go to war economy, which does get a bit dreary, especially if you're trying to build a gigantic navy. But obviously the historical path, pretty simple. It does its job, it works, it's fun. I've got to say, German tree, probably a B tier, only because, alright, hear me out, it's very fun, but it's also very, it needs a rework. the only problem is, I guarantee that if they do ever do a rework, they're gonna make it horrendous. Like, there's just gonna be too much guff in here. But it is fun, and probably one of the best nations to play in the game. It's just a B tier though, you know? It's not mid, it's fun, it's great, but it's not spectacular. Alright, here we go. Greece, immediate F tier. I think I said it enough in my Greece video at Hoi 4 A to Z, but I hate this focus tree. It's so all over the place. There is so much for you to do. It sucks. It's one of those focuses that I read or heard from many people that it was outsourced by someone who didn't even playtest it or something. That could be completely wrong. Don't pin that on me. I'm just saying whoever made this clearly didn't play the game very much. There's a line on here that pretty much equates to literally nothing. Like going communist, you go through all the communists, which are 70 days, and boom, what happens? Nothing. That's right, if you go communist, you go down all of these focuses all the way down to here, and the very first time you can do any expansion is all the way down here, and then once you've done that, you get focus trees to you kill Italy and Germany. It's like, it's now thought out, it's pretty terrible, and obviously the biggest meme is the left side over here with revitalizing and revamping Byzantium. The big problem is it just doesn't make a lot of sense on how you do it. You actually need to, I think, reject the Magali idea to revive Byzantium. It's a bit of a mess, and once you do it anyway, like, you don't get any further options to do it. You just need to start killing people. It's not very good. It sucks. It should have been way better for what it is, but the Greece tree, there is just so much to do. It's all 70 days for the most part for anything that's good. And it just sucks. It's terrible. It's not fun. I don't like it. Some people might like it. For me, this is pretty much, until we get to another nation that came in this DLC pack, one of the worst focuses in the game. In fact, you know what? Just because I remember that there is another focus that is worse than this one, I would put this upper rank just because the other one is so bad too, but it is way more playable than this one. But this is an F tier, guaranteed, not saying anything else. Hungary, probably one of everyone's favorite nations in Hoi 4. It's pretty simple. All you want to do in this entire thing is reform Austria-Hungary, and you can do it. It's easy peasy. It's nothing terribly great. There are other paths you can do that make you pretty much the Canada of Europe in terms of what you'll be accomplishing. Either you'll be helping the Soviets, or you'll be helping the Germans, or you'll say, screw you both and reform Austria-Hungary, which is the only path that I realistically recommend. Austria-Hungary is very fun. I don't need to tell you that, obviously, because it's probably one of the most played nations in the game. You do get yourself a pretty well-balanced focus tree, where you do get yourself a bit of industry, not too much. A lot of your power just comes by reforming Austria-Hungary, which is a little bit difficult now, I think, because of the new guarantees from France, but as long as I'm aware, I think these do go away after something. I could be wrong. I'm basing my knowledge from Hungary on the the past patches. And I think there are even ways to go about forming Austria-Hungary where if you time it just right, you can even avoid war with the Germans, which makes you even more powerful. So I'm definitely going to have to do that at some point. Austria-Hungary, or should I say Hungary, pretty simple, B tier. Very fun. Focus tree is pretty simple, but it does everything you want it to. Alright. You know what time it is, oh boy! It's pizza o'clock! Hear me out, alright? This is gonna be controversial. I don't think the Italian focus tree is horrendous. Yep. Okay. Oh, okay. Whoa! Oh, it was ganging up on me there. But the Italian focus tree is the definition of mid. It ain't great, but what it has in there is it's something. Okay, it does give you some options of expansion, industry, even resources. It's just dated beyond belief, and that's for the simple fact the Italian focus tree has not been changed from release. This is exactly how you would find it back in 2016, which is solely where the problem comes from. A lot of nations that people complain about that didn't really have too much impact in World War II got a much larger focus tree than the Italian ones, who had, some would say, a bit more of a crucial involvement. Now, again, I gotta say, I think the Italian tree ain't great, alright? It's not fun for the most part. A lot of the fun that comes from playing Italy is doing all the gamey stuff like early warring France and the United Kingdom and annexing them immediately, speedrunning, forming Rome, stuff like that, which you can do easily without even ever touching the focus tree. As such, there's not a lot more for me to say here. Everything that's in here is just here. It ain't great, it doesn't help you at all, but it's something, alright? It's not terrible, but it's definitely not great, and I can't realistically put it any higher than a D tier. Italy, D. Woo, okay, hear me out, this is gonna be another controversial one. I think the Japanese focus tree sucks. You do get the option of getting a few extra historical paths. I think the communist one is completely unfun. You just immediately get sent into a civil war. It's not that great. It doesn't lead to anything amazing. The historical one is just incredibly lacking. It only really seems to go up to the war with China, and once you are done with the war with China, it's just, well, now you've got to go to war with the Allies. Have fun. And I think the most fun of the ahistorical paths is actually the democratic one, which if you go down to Pacific Guardian, I think you go ahead and start getting protection of some of the colonies over here, which if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend you actually do. I think there's still a way you can go to war with China even if you do that as well. So I think democratic Japan is a lot more fun than it is to go any of the other two paths, and the other path, by the way, here is just going non-aligned Showa restorationist, or the shogunate. You can keep it's not very fun is what I'm saying. It's very lacking. It's not amazing, but you do go ahead and get yourself pretty much 2 free Yamatos over here, so that's probably the most overpowered naval focus in the game right there. Yeah, the Japanese focus tree way better than the Italian one, I gotta say that, but it is a definite mid. It's a C tier. Nothing great. It'll probably get something added on in the future, I imagine, maybe, who knows. C tier. And now we get to its much better puppet, Manchuria. Now, Manchuria gets the added benefit of getting the invite foreign investors part of the Warlord and Chinese tree, but it also gets its own very unique part over here where you can actually break free from Japanese rule, or for some reason stay with them, never do that by the way, and get yourself independent and reform the Mandate of Heaven! Again, this is one of those focus trees that is very fun, and it's only really added to the benefit of it being possible. It's not hard to do whatsoever, and if you do it, you'll have a lot of fun in doing so. It's very much a short but sweet focus tree, but considering I've complained about other trees not giving you much past a certain point, which is the independence war here, you will immediately just go back to war with China and start beating them up, but you do get the option to offer vassalization to help you in your war with China. So it's a lot better if you just join and start beating up Japan like ASAP as soon as you do any of this. But like I was saying, I have complained about other focuses being incredibly lacking, because once you do actually go down here, the only other focuses you get are over here in inviting the foreign investors, and then all the way down here. It's a fun, short, small focus tree, and as such, it also goes in the mid tier, but it goes ahead of Japan, that's for sure. It's a C tier, but it's on a different level as Japan. If there was more to it, it would definitely be in there with a B, or maybe even an A tier, that's for certain, but it's a C tier. It's fun though. A lot more fun than Japan. Alright, probably one of the best focuses in the game. Just kidding. It's another mid one, okay? But it is a lot of fun when you go ahead and play the Mexicans. You can get, as you may all famously know, a massive communist fun time if you get Leon Trotsky as leader. And in doing so, you annex the Americas and also South America. It's a lot of fun to play Mexico. The only real downside is you do need to make sure you're taking a lot of care to not fall into endless civil wars. You could also stay democratic. It is pretty much another Canada in the game if you wanted to play a more allied focus one, and it's fun, honestly. The Mexican tree, I think the best path is definitely getting Leon Trotsky in, though. I'm not biased. So just because I've put too many nations in C tier already, you're going to have a lot more fun if you play Mexico, if you actually do what I just said and go communist, and I think it's a definite B tier. It's very fun, very, like, ahistorically based, I gotta say, and you pretty much become a giant communist power over here, untouched, because if you do it right and you beat up America before they join the Allies, you get all of America's industry, and especially if you're doing collab governments on them beforehand, you become very, very powerful. It's a lot of fun. Focus is pretty well balanced. You get a lot in there. B tier. B for burrito. Don't hate. Alrighty, the Dutch, in my opinion, kind of suck. The most of the Dutch tree that you'll get down, other than the option where you will do Wilhelmism, is that you are pretty much intended to lose and then come back and fight from the Dutch East Indies, which is, again, very fun, but also not that fun. The Dutch tree, for the most part, is definitely about holding. If you go down the orange Boven part, you can go ahead and get Wilhelmism, but the only problem is, I'm pretty sure you can't actually do it until you are actually at war, which is a bit of a pain. But if you do manage to actually go down here and hold against the Germans and manage to actually push into them, I think only a tile, you get a civil war in the Germans where you actually get them as a puppet. So it is a little bit tricky, but I guess if you do pull it off, it's pretty powerful. It's just definitely down to skill for the most part. But every other path for the Dutch, I gotta say, don't really have fun with. It's not that great. And yeah, it's just meh. Yeah, D tier for Dutch. New Zealand. Okay, we're gonna be very quick with this one. It is the definition of a E tier if I've ever seen one. It sucks. Never play New Zealand. There's nothing fun to do here. It's terrible. It's boring. You're crap. Just play Australia if you want to play down here. I hate it so much, I'm gonna delete the units. Everything you can kind of do as New Zealand, there is a better nation in the Allies and the same DLC to do it better. I think everything added here was just a kind of last fort for Paradox. It's not great, honestly. It's in fact, it's terrible. I just personally hate the Greek tree more, so it would be down there. And you know what? I feel bad. It's going in F tier. It sucks. Here we go. Here's the controversial one. I absolutely hate this focus tree. It is so all over the place. It is long. It is complicated. It is terrible. Again, this path, like, just look at it, okay? All you need to do is look at this tree to make you know that it has no idea what it's doing. It's like a absolute minefield, actually picking which paths you need to go to get the correct things. I mean, just looking at it right now, you would not even know how to reform the Ottoman Empire, which I'm assuming is the path the majority of people will want to do. But the real problem with the Turkish focus tree is that it is so damn long. It is ridiculously long. By the time it's 1942, you will only have just gotten to actually thinking about doing any expansion or aggressive play. It is long, it is tedious, it sucks. If you've watched my recent Turkey in Hoi 4 A to Z, you know it also doesn't really make sense what you do get given and what you don't get given. I don't recommend doing it at all. If you want to go ahead and for some reason do the Ottoman path, you're guaranteed to having to go to war with pretty much everyone to get everything you need. It's not great. Also, look at that. Realize the nightmare of the Meiji. Your final task as the Ottomans is to kill Japan. It's a mess. It ain't great. It's not as terrible as Greece, but it's terrible for its own reasons, and I gotta put it in an F tier, okay? It ain't great. It's probably more fun than Greece, though, I do have to say. But it's terrible. I hate the focus tree. It deserved better. Poland time, and personally, I've got to say the Polish tree is amazing. I think it's one of the only countries recently added where I've actually wanted and have played all of the paths as Poland. It's very fun. They all offer a unique kind of gameplay aspect. You also have the secret options in the focus tree too, which if you don't know, well, you're gonna have to do some digging. It's very good. I gotta say, it might look a bit of a mess, but it's really not. I think every part of this tree is pretty good. I think the strongest is actually going down here and assembling the Regency Council, though. All of these paths are, again, very good. I'm gonna keep saying it. You're very strong. You can easily hold off the Germans, and I'm gonna say it's a B tier. It's another guaranteed B tier country. Portugal, wow, epic, amazing. The only path anyone ever does is reforming Brazil, Portugal. It's all you have to do, really. The rest of this focus tree could just be absolutely zero. It's another guaranteed C tier country, but the only real positives you do get is if you end up at war with the Allies as Portugal, you get collaboration governments pretty much guaranteed in both India and in China. So it's very, very powerful if you do go to war with any of them. So I think the Portuguese actually are incredibly powerful. It's very easy to go to war with the Chinese on any of your paths, but obviously you'll want to be doing it as the Brazilians, which you can't do. Portugal, though, it's fun. Probably one of the most fun ahistorical paths in the game. But it's nothing too special. It's another C tier. Alright, it's Raj time. And let's be real, it's nothing great. It came with Together for Victory. It's nothing amazing. The real fun you get out of the Indian tree is getting nukes incredibly early. I also think actually breaking free from the British in the Civil War is, again, broken. This tree needs a rework, is what I'm saying. And for the most part, if you stay historical, you don't get a lot done. You just end up being another Canada, but weaker because you're a puppet of Britain. Yeah, a lot of the fun from the British Raj just comes from fighting the enemy, honestly. Not a lot of fun actually comes from the focus tree, and as such, I gotta put it with the Czechs in the E tier. I go with Romania, probably one of the I don't actually know what to think about Romania. The fun part of Romania actually comes from the fact that you can just switch governments whenever you really want down here, which it leads to some interesting gameplay. You can also do the King Michael's coup, where you can get torn out of the war if you really want to, if you're not going your way. Romania's tree, it ain't that great. Not a lot to do. It's fun though. Playing Romania is definitely fun, but like I've said 10 billion times by now, a lot of the fun from Romania does not come from its focus tree. It comes from the situations that you'll be put in regardless of the focus tree. Of course, going Balkans dominance though, it is a very easy, very early path to actually doing some conquest, so I do have to put it higher than the Czechs. It is a D tier. Damn, Together for Victory really added the most amazing focus trees, am I right? It's terrible. South Africa's focus tree ain't that great. It's not as bad as the Indian one, in my opinion, because you do get some ahistorical paths that do actually work, albeit they are difficult to do, especially reclaiming all of Africa. It is an achievement, if I remember correctly, but it ain't as bad as South Africa. Do gotta say that. Is it a D tier though? I can't say I really focus myself in playing South Africa. I think it's just another E tier. Sorry, South African fans, it's nothing great. Soviet Onion time, and this is probably my favorite focus in the game right now. I think the joy that comes out of the focus tree with the Soviets is that a lot of people go into it thinking that you have to do every focus because there are so many to do, which leads to a lot of people wondering like how they haven't managed to actually do everything that you need to do as the Soviets, when realistically you don't need to do a lot of this stuff. Personally, what I do if I do a Soviet game and I want it to stay historical, I would only be going down one of the opposite paths. Like sometimes I won't even do the industry till later on. The fun actually comes from choosing how you want to play the game and what you want to do, because there is, like I said, so much to do, and a lot of these are really long focuses, but the joy honestly comes from picking what you want to do. You don't have to do it all. That's what I'm saying. And once you realize you can become pretty powerful without having to do the expand the red fleet, you have a lot of fun. You also get the joy of the alt history paths, but I think realistically the best path you can do is historical with Stalin. You don't have to worry about all the purges and stuff, and also you do have the fun but challenging bringing back the Russian Empire, which I highly recommend. It's actually one of the most fun historical paths you can do in the game. Now, it is challenging, but it is very rewarding if you do so. The only problem I have to say is that you do end up a little bit weaker than you would be if you didn't, you know, have to fight the entire country for like 2 years. But I gotta say, the Soviet tree, very well done. You just need to get over the fact that you don't have to do all of these focuses. You realize if you click into them, a lot of the bonuses that you'll be getting counteract all of the negatives within 1 or 2 focuses. You don't have to go all the way down for the most part for them to be beneficial. As such, the Soviet Union will be my very first S-tier nation. It's great. I really enjoy the focus, and I think there's only going to be 1, maybe 2 more in that S tier. Spain. Probably one of the giantest focuses ever. Alright, I think Spain, for the most part, probably has some fun in it, okay? The only problem I have with the focus through the Spanish is that where is the fun? How do I find the fun? There's so much in here. The Spanish tree, for the most part, is just insanely bloated, and trying to figure out which path you want to do can seem a little bit confusing at times, but it is fun. There are fun to be had in here. The only real downside that I think people find is actually finding the Spanish Civil War isn't that fun at all, especially since some of the paths, like which one is it, the cardless one, actually require you to start as a different nation and then fight halfway through the Civil War as a different nation. It gets a little bit annoying and confusing, but overall the Spanish tree is, it's a tree and it's Spanish. I think you could be here for the end of time and still not do every path in the Spanish tree. That is for damn certain. Yeah, I think without a doubt Spanish tree is definitely a C tier, but I do know for a fact that like going down the communist side is not fun at all. You do end up at war with the Soviets because they'll get this land and you don't get any option to take it back properly. You'll just be endlessly at war with the Soviet Union, which means a lot of these paths aren't realistically worth you going out of your way to actually try. But I think the one we had fun with recently was going over here in the left side correctly, where we actually retake the Americas and you get an option to start saying dominance over there. That was very fun. So there is a lot of fun to be had. Gotta put it in a C tier though, just because it's a bit of mess and it requires too much FNAF in the middle of the Civil War. Alright, he's here. It's the UK! Now the UK, just like America, is very fun, but it is actually, now that I think, I would have put it on an A tier, but now that I'm looking at it, I think it could potentially potentially almost be an S tier. Now, the only reason it could be higher than America is for the simple fact you actually get a historical path in democracy, which is getting Churchill in early, which is very fun because you go to war with Iraq and the Netherlands to secure oil. And one of the biggest downsides to being the British is you don't in fact get any oil at all, which can be a massive detriment to you motorizing your army or, you know, maintaining this giant navy. So I think personally, if you go steady as she goes and actually motion of no confidence, it's very fun. Plus on top of that, you can still go ahead and do the Imperial Federation in all of your democracy playthroughs, which again, a lot of fun, which realistically is the only reason I could put it higher than America. I think they're pretty even in terms of fun for allied playthroughs. The only difference is that this has way better ahistorical paths. I will just say that the communist one don't enjoy, and I don't enjoy the black shirts or the king's pie. I think the real fun from the ahistorical path actually comes from no confidencing Mr. Chamberlain ASAP. Decolonizing as well is nothing but a lag fest. I do have to give some credit. Alright, the King's Party and the black shirts, they're okay. The only problem is that you end up having to go to war with all of the dominions to get them back on your side, which is a pain. Although it is more fun than going the Confederates or the communists as America. I do gotta say that much. So I think UK, in terms of fun and what you can do in their normal focus tree, which is all down here, mostly industry and getting technology, and then obviously strengthening up your vassals and forming the Imperial Federation, actually is an S tier. I play a lot of UK games, I play a lot of Soviets, Germans, and Americans. They're all my very much favorite nations in the game, like I've said a bunch of times. UK, definitely an S tier country, but I do want to add that I think America could also be up there with an S tier country. It's just, I think you'll have more fun playing the UK and doing the Imperial Federation, because if you do the Imperial Federation, you can also get America in it if you go down one of the ahistorical paths, which is very good, getting cores on all of America. Yeah, that settles it. UK, S tier country. Alright, for the rest of the focuses, I'm gonna go ahead and just lump in the rest of the warlords together. Now, the fun with the warlords just comes from you either going ahead and cooperating with the nationalists and doing the power struggle where you will just overtake China, and a lot like the communist one if you go down social democracy. But I think realistically the fun you can have as, say, the Guanxi clique is actually going down opposition, staying out of the war with Japan, and just slowly eating China like we did with Yunnan. The only reason I'm not doing them all separately is because they all have the exact same tree. That's the only reason. If we were doing nations specifically, I'd break it down a bit more. Like, we know Yunnan is a lot more fun than Shanxi, gotta say that pretty quickly, but they do all have the same focus. But it is very fun, I gotta say, it is very fun, the warlord focus, because at the end of it you do proclaim a rival government and get the actual Chinese focus tree too, which means if you start as a warlord, you can actually get a fascist or communist China without actually being stuck, because China cannot change their ruling party at all. There is no option to do that. And overall, the warlord, considering it is two focus trees in one essentially, and you get rid of all of your bad debuffs, and if you finish the entirety of this in general, you get way more buffs than you would be in normal China. I gotta say, the warlord tree, a lot of fun. I've said it a million times. It's gonna be a B tier. Alright, Yugoslavia. Alright, so people were wondering if I was gonna do the dissolving the government and then reforming them as Yugoslavia, which again, I know it's very powerful because the AI will do all of their focuses to get all industry, and then when you get them out, you get way more manpower, way more army, way more stuff. Okay, yeah, it's fun. It's just not that fun. I think the real fun from Yugoslavia came with what I did, which was just going communist and inviting all of your neighbors so you don't have to worry about them getting invaded from them, and just holding out against the Germans. So you can become incredibly powerful without doing any expansion at all, which I think is a very unique focus tree. Out of I think it was Death or Dishonor, now with the actual rework of this, because this didn't used to be like this, they did change this. I think Yugoslavia definitely would be be in the C tier, because it is above Romania, in my opinion, okay? Just because I like the gameplay more, and there is a lot more options to go down at Yugoslavia. But, I don't know, actually. It could be another D tier country. It's not amazing, it's not spectacular. And I think, to be fair to Romania, I guess you do a lot more in this tree. It's really tough, I gotta say. Yugoslavia, you know, just to be fair to Romania, I'm going to put it in D tier too, but again, just because it's in D tier doesn't mean it's not a fun nation to play it, but I think a lot of the fun that comes from playing Yugoslavia doesn't come from the focus tree, it comes from holding out against your neighbors. Alright, now that is pretty much every focus tree bar free. The Braun, you're going to have to actually add these flags in post because they're not on the tree, they've not been updated, but the last ones we have is Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, and we're going to quick fire these bad boys because one of them's going to surprise you. Estonia, not very fun, D tier. Latvia, not very fun, D tier. Lithuania though, S tier. Yeah, you heard me right, didn't you? You're actually shaking in your boots right there. I think Lithuania is a S tier nation. You want to know why? Simply for the fact, if you play as Lithuania, you get cores on all of the Baltics and you can get yourself Poland. By doing this, by the time you've actually gotten all of them, you will have a enormous industry because all of them will have done their focuses to get industry too. Lithuania is amazing, absolutely amazing. Better than Poland if you wanted to do Poland, Lithuania, simply for the fact you also get the Baltics and cores on them. And of course, I do have to say that it is not the most large, amazing focus tree ever, but what is in there is so overpowered, it's ridiculous. Getting Poland just through a focus is insane, and you know, the added benefit of getting them as cores and forming a nation with them, and then even more cores over here in the Soviet Union is it's insane how powerful Lithuania can become. Plus you get the added bonus of not having to fight the Germans. You don't have to fight them at all, but you do have to fight the Soviets. I do have to point that out there. So you're gonna have to hold, which is incredibly easy because again, your industry will be insane. Lithuania's focus tree is definitely an S tier because I think it may unironically be one of the most overpowered focuses in the game. I just have to say that. Also, you get the added benefit of when you do get Poland, you get more to do. Like, there is actually more down here, and then even more over here in the left in actually building up your industry and stuff like that, and doing the trade with the Axis or the Allies. There's a lot to do in Lithuania, and I think it is, in terms of gameplay and focus, the best of both worlds. It combines together, you have a lot of fun fighting the Soviets, you get a industrial score that is ridiculous for the nation that you are. Lithuania is an S tier, which is insane, probably a little bit hypocritical compared to some of the stuff I've complained about, but in my opinion, I really enjoy Lithuania. I've played it like 3 or 4 times now, probably less than nations that are in A tier, but it's left such an impression on me that I think everyone should get the DLC just to play Lithuania. Lithuania and the Soviets are very fun, and just saying that out loud, you've got to remember that if you look back at DLCs, there's usually only one good focus tree among all the DLCs that are released, and yeah, the Soviets and Lithuania both being in S tier from the same DLC definitely makes it worth it for you to buy it, including obviously all the new stuff from that patch and DLC. So yeah, that's my focus tree tier list. That is me. A lot of them I'm sure you will agree or disagree with. I want to know specifically what you agree and disagree with down in the comments down below. And hopefully you guys have enjoyed this and hearing me ramble about the best focus trees and the worst in Hoi 4. And looking at my tier list right now, I think I'd probably move some little things around, maybe. I'd probably upgrade a few from the D tier into the C tier and move a couple from the C tier down to the D tier. It depends on the day I'm having, I won't lie. But yeah, from that list, I gotta say I'm pretty happy with it. I think if you wanted to have the most fun in Hoi 4, you should go through that list and get the DLCs that go with getting those focuses. You'll have a lot of fun. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video, you want to see more tier lists or something done, let me know. Leave a like, hit the subscribe button down below. Bye! Oh, sorry, that was the Turkish focus tree coming up from the garbage.